I stole these hands and feet because of the fact that as a slave, we were not allowed to know our age, we were not allowed to know our names, and on top of that, there was a lot of other things that we were forbidden to know, and one of them would be to read. They say I was born on the Tuckahoe by the Hillsborough, Eastern Maryland. I was raised on a plantation which is called the Lloyd's Plantation, which just so happened to be the largest plantation in Eastern Maryland. My mother's name, believe it or not, is Harriet Bailey. Now my mother, she would escape 3 times a week sometime. Can you imagine? 3 times a week she would escape from 12 miles away with no shoes on, coming to see me as a baby. And keep in mind, she had to be back at that plantation before the crack of dawn, or else she stand to be whipped. Now just imagine 3 times a week she was doing this to come and see her little Freddie. Now, how do we arrive at the February the 14th, which you all know as Valentine's Day? Well, we arrived at February the 14th because of the fact that my mother, she would hold me and rock me and call me her little Valentine. Going back to my mother, Harriet Bailey, I met my mother and I seen my mother maybe 7 times. When I got 7 years old, she had already passed away. Now, when I say she had already passed away at the age of 7, that's almost like one would drink water and throw the container away without any afterthought. And that's how I thought about it when I found out my mother had passed, because there was no close relationship with her. My grandmother, Betty Bailey. Now Betty Bailey, please understand that she was a courageous young lady. I say that because my grandmother, she took care of my master's family. And as a matter of fact, not just my master, but she took care of my master when he was a little child, all the way up. And I had the great advantage of spending time with my grandmother up until that one time that we walked seemingly 20 miles away from the Lord's plantation, not knowing that she was taking me to safety. And when we got to this plantation that she took to, she introduced me to a young lady by the name of Aunt Katie. Now Aunt Katie, in today's words, if I could use it, she did not play the radio. She was very mean to me, and I must say, I hated her. I despised her. But to any avail, my grandmother took me to this plantation. She introduced me to Aunt Katie. Now, all of a sudden, my grandmother told me to go outside and play. I didn't want to go out and play, but she coerced me to go out and play. Even though I went outside, I did not play. And one of the kids came to me and said, "Freddie, your grandmother is gone." Gone? Yeah, she left. And I got so upset because she was like my heartbeat. Why would she leave me like this? Well, I ran out to see if she was really gone. And yes, she was gone, never to be seen again. The next thing I heard about my grandmother, that she had died. And when she got old and senile, they put her out in a cabin to fend for herself. And not only had I heard that she had passed away, but instead of having a proper funeral for her, they just dug a hole and they just put her in that hole. And that was the end of it. I know you're sitting here and you're wondering, okay, well, who was your dad? Who helped bring you here? Well, I didn't know my father. At least, I didn't know. But talk was going around that my dad was no other than Aaron Anthony. They called him Captain Anthony And the reason they called him Captain Anthony was because of the fact that on the weekends, he would sail his sailboat with his captain's hat on. So that's how I found out, or that's what I heard, that he was my dad. Now, I must let you know that even though I was his illegitimate child, if you will, there was no privileges involved for me. I was still treated as a slave. Now, I remember one night we were all sleeping together, all cuddled up because it was kind of chilly outside, and I hear from afar, I hear screaming noise or yelling and crying, and I'm like, it startled me so much that I got up to go see who was this? Who was this lady screaming and hollering? So when I ran over there, and all of a sudden I got behind a wall to see who it was no other than my Aunt Hester. Massa had my aunt strung up, and he ripped her back off, her shirt off, and he started whipping her. And the whip, I could just see it as it touched her back. As soon as it opened up the skin, blood was just splattering everywhere. And she would scream and holler. And my master, as he whipped her, he said, now you shut that noise up. You shut that noise up. But the more he whipped her, the more she screamed and hollered. He said, you're mine. Don't never let me catch you. Cross that fence with that slave over there. Who was that slave? That slave was no other than Ned. They were sort of kind of courting each other. I know today y'all called it dating, but back then we called it courting each other. And Massa wanted my Aunt Hester for himself. That's why he whipped and told my Aunt Hester never to be seen with Ned again. Now I must share some personal revelations with you if I will. See, back then, as slaves, we didn't have beds to sleep in. So we slept on the floor. We didn't have covers in the cold of the winter. We didn't have covers. So myself, I would cover up with a wool sack, potato sack that is. Clothes that they would give us. Well, the adults, they would get one pair of pants, one pair of shirts, a shirt, pair of pants, and a pair of shoes. The women, they would get one dress. This is 365 days a year. They had to wear this. And if it was destroyed, then that's all you got. So what about us kids? Well, we just got a gown. And if we outgrew that gown, that was our clothing limit for the year. Our eating, how did we eat? Well, I guarantee you, we were not at a nice, large kitchen table eating victuals with the family. We were out back. And they would bring sometimes slop. And some would call it hog maws back then. Wait a minute, let me ask. Today, do you still have hog maws? Anybody know? She said no. Okay, I just was just checking. And by the way, since I said today and early, let me back up a little bit. February the 14th, which is Valentine's Day, I believe that's in what, 2 days? I think everybody should give me a round of applause, because 2 days from now, I will be exactly 201 years old. Don't touch me, I'm on my fall apart. So anyway, when they would serve us this food, if you will, this mush, sometimes because we didn't have the proper utensils that you all are used to, such as a fork and spoon and a knife, we would use sometimes a seashell to scoop it up and scoop it in our mouths. Sometimes we would use our hands just to scoop it up and turtle it in our mouths. Or sometimes we'll use any instrument that we will find to help us to scoop up this watery base substance that kept us alive. Far as bathing goes, there was a pond. The Hillsborough River, there was a pond. But in that pond, I must tell you, and I don't know if anybody ate yet, but in that pond, that's where the animals would go to do their business, to drink. That's where our parents would go and wash their clothes. That's where we would go and bathe to keep clean. And there was other things that went on in this pond. So you can only imagine what type of bathing we were getting at this time. Well, just for the sake of time, I'll move forth and I'll let you know that my father, Aaron Anthony, had a daughter. The daughter's name was Lucretia. She was married to Master Huard. She did not know. I'll let you know a secret. She did not know that I was her little brother. But she treated me like a brother. All these years later, as I contemplate on why did Miss Lucretia treat me so well-handed as opposed to all the other slaves, I can only come to one conclusion in my uneducated thoughts, is that, it must be a word spelled G-E-N-E-S, genes. We had the same genes, and sometimes it might have been because her heart went out for me, so I got special privileges at time. So this one particular day, she called me, "Freddie, come, come." "Yes, madam, yes, ma'am." And I ran to her. She said, "Freddie, I need you to go to the big house." "The big house, ma'am?" "Yes, today is your lucky day. You get to take a bath." "A bath?" "Yes, in a bathtub with nice clean water." "Oh, now I want you to go up on the second floor," which I did. And I saw that nice tub full of clean water. Now keep in mind, I'm 7 years old and I never had a decent bath up until this coming moment. Sir, I have you know, when I got in that tub, I didn't even really want to come out. Because it was about an hour later and Miss Lucretia comes and calling me, "Frederick, what you doing in that tub? You've been in there a whole hour. What's going on?" "I was getting out, ma'am." I didn't really want to get out until she came up and made me get out. She dragged me out that beautiful water. Well, when I got out of that water, believe it or not, she gave me my first pair of pants. She gave me my first shirt. And she also gave me my first what? Pair of shoes. And she said, "Frederick, you're going to Baltimore." "Baltimore?" "Yes, you're going to Baltimore." And I got on that carriage and we made our way to Baltimore. And when we got to this home in Fells Point, there were 3 people standing outside. I noticed from afar there was a lady, there was a man, and there was a little child. Well, the lady was no other than Miss Sophia. You might have heard of her, Miss Sophia. And her husband, yes, her husband, was no other than Thomas Ard. And they had a son who was Tommy Ard. And they was all standing outside. So as I got off this carriage and I'm making my way up the walkway to the home, as I get closer, I put my head down. Because see, back then, we as a Negro child and a slave, you're not allowed to look white people in their face. So as I got closer, automatically I dropped my head as I went forth. And as I got close, and I saw the feet right there, I stopped. I stopped in front of Miss Sophia. Miss Sophia, she said, "Frederick, look at me." I said, "This lady crazy. She just want to kill me. I ain't going to look at her." And she said, "Frederick, it's okay. You can look at me." And I said to myself, I'm not going to look at her because I want to live. So all of a sudden, she took her hand and she put it up under my chin. And she started lifting my face up. So as my face came up, I came up such as. And as I came up, her face was like right here. I could smell her breath. And I could just feel her on me. And she said, "Frederick, open your eyes." I said, "This lady really want to kill me. I am not opening my eyes." And she said, "Come on, Freddie, it's okay. You can open up your eyes." So as I opened up my eyes, such as, I saw big blue eyes looking at me. I seen some red cheeks looking at me, rosy cheeks looking at me, and I saw a big layer of teeth looking at me. And she said, "Freddie, this is your home. Welcome home. How you feeling?" "I feel okay, ma'am." So as she stepped away, then Master Ard stepped in. And right away, you know I went down quick. And he said, "Freddie, I just want to let you know, son, you're here to take care of little Tommy. You understand me?" "Yes, sir, master. I was here to take care of little Tommy." Now, that's Tommy right there. I want you to look at Tommy. "Hi, Tommy." "Okay, all right." So, as time went on, I have you know, in case you didn't know, Tommy went to school. Tommy came home with books. So, let me tell you before I get to that, Miss Sophia Miss Sophia, who could not read that well, she would, believe it or not, be sitting in the living room reading, and she would say, Freddie, come here, Freddie. I come to her, and I'm ready to sit on the floor. And she say, no, Freddie, you sit right here next to me on the couch. And I'll sit right there, and I'll muster up to her and whatnot, and she'll start reading to me. And then all of a sudden, she'll say, okay, Freddie, I want you to repeat after me. A, B, B, C. Well, one day, while we was having a reading lesson, all of a sudden, we heard the door. And as we looked, it was Master Thomas Hard. And as he came in, he said, Miss Sophia, don't you be teaching those little Negro children how to read. You teach them how to read, then they're going to want to take over. Now, I'm going to be never catch you teaching these kids to read. You understand? And she just went, but Tommy, no excuse. And I have you know that from that point on, she changed her whole attitude about who I was. She no longer treated me like a human being. She began to treat me as a slave. Like I stole something from her. However, as time went on, believe it or not, they would send me to the store. I'm going to use this chair a little later. They would send me to the store. And as I go to the store on errands, how many of you all would like to take a guess as to how much, how much the Hughes family would pay me, or the Arndt family would pay me to go to the store? Anybody want to take a guess? Go ahead, my son.
1 cent.
You the man. What's your name?
Gary.
Gary, you must have been back there with me, huh? All right. 1 cent they would pay me to go to the store. But before I would leave the house, I would juggle my way to the kitchen, and I would get me some bread, and I'll tear the bread up, and I'll stuff my pockets with it. And then I'll just skip on down to the store, such as. And when I get to the store, there were some white boys at the store. Guess what? They were hungry, and I was hungry. I was hungry. Anybody want to take a guess what I was hungry for? Go ahead.
Money.
No. I'm already getting paid a penny, so I don't need no more money. Anybody else? Want to take a guess what I was hungry for?
Ham.
Ham? No. How about education? Now, the white boys that were there, what were they hungry for? Food. That's right. And guess who had the food? I did. So when I went and I approached them and we started, like, hey, Freddie, hey, how you doing, guys? Guess what? I bet you nobody here know how to spell hat. Oh, come on, Freddie. That's too easy. I bet you can't spell hat. And they would say H-A-T. And I was like, that ain't how you spell it. They said, yeah. I said, if that's how you spell it, then spell it again. And they would spell it again. I said, nah, that ain't how you spell it. If you know how to spell it, then spell it one more time. And they would spell it one more time. Now, the reason I would have them to spell it 3 times, because the first 2 times would go to my frontal lobe. The 3rd time, it would travel its way down to my what? Membrane. My long-term memory. So that way, I got a hold of it. So once they did that, once I got a hold of it, guess what I did? It was payday. I come out my pocket and I feed them with some bread. And we did that so many times. And the Arts paid me so many times a penny. And you know what eventually I did with those pennies? Take a guess.
You bought your way out of slavery.
Nope, that's too early.
Too early?
I didn't buy no Jordans either. So what did I buy? A what? A book, that's right. I bought my first book, which was the Columbian Order. Inside of that Columbian Order, there were great speeches. Great speeches that have been written by giants of that time. Who are the giants I'm talking about? George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Edgar Allan Poe, and somebody help me out. The writer of the Star Spangled Banner, I keep forgetting his name.
Francis Scott Key.
Francis Scott Key, that's right. Thank you. And as a matter of fact, here's another trivia question for you since you went there. Francis Scott Key and Edgar Allan Poe, where were they born?
Baltimore.
Who said Baltimore? That's it. Baltimore, Maryland. And here's another question for you. Thomas Jefferson and George Washington, they were housed where? Where were they housed at? Where was their home? That's George Washington. But once he became president, where was he housed at? The White House. Washington, D.C. Yeah, the White House. Okay? Now, please understand this, and I'm going to jump way ahead then I'll come back. When I was about the age of maybe 70, 75 years old, maybe once or twice a year, I would visit George Washington's home. I would go there for meetings that we would have there. And I tell you, it was splendid to go into the home of the first president of these United States, because he really lived in a gigantic mansion. Would you believe that? Oh, it was wonderful, and I must let you all know this. I was the only black man there, so I felt like a giant. Anyway, going back to when I was a kid, I got that Columbian Order, and I read, and I read, and I read. And I stayed with the arts until I was maybe about 14, 15, 16 years old. Now, please understand that by the time I was 14, 15, 16 years old, I was mighty tall. I was built. Okay? And that's basically from working out in the plantation. So quite naturally, I became big. I didn't have to go to Planet Fitness. So anyway, so Master Ard, I overheard him talking. And he said that Frederick is getting beside himself. He no longer talks like a slave. I got a feeling that he's been in some books, because he's talking, he's got a handle on that vocabulary. So I think what we need to do, we need to send him off. We need to send Frederick to a slave breaker that will break him, and that's what they did. They sent me to Master Corvey's plantation. Now Master Corvey, I must tell you, was a poor slave owner. I must tell you, he only had 2 slaves. He had a young lady and he had a young man who were slaves. And when I got there, well, now he got 3 slaves. And I'll have you know, for the first 6 months, Master Corvey, he beat me constantly. Constantly, he beat me. And when I walked on that plantation from the first day, I walked like this. 6 months later, I was walking like this. That's how bad he had beat me. I had welts all over my back that I went to my grave with. Well, one day, on a day off, if you will, one of the days off, because Master Corvey, he made us work from sun up to sundown. We really didn't have that much time off. So one day on a Sunday, I was out on the Chesapeake, out on a ridge, and I was watching the water as it flowed, just gently and free. And I said to myself, I said, I will always be a slave. I wish I could be free like this water to flow north, south, or wherever I desired to go. Well, while there one time, two slave owners came horsing by, and they noticed me. And they said, wow, that's a handsome young man there. So one of the slave owners said, I think you need to be free. You should go north. That's what you should do. You should run away and go north. Well, I kind of figured, it sounded good, but I kind of figured it was a trap. Because if I would have went north, I don't think I would have got mighty far, because I might have been hanging. So even though they told me I should run, did I run? That's the question I'm asking. Did I run? No, that time was yet to come. However, so I go back to the plantation, and all of a sudden, I was out baling the hay. And as I was out baling the hay, it was 3 of us, 3 slaves. I was a slave in the middle. And as I'm passing the hay on so you can go into the machine, I started getting the pain in my side. And as I got the pain in my side, I went down. And this slave, he hollered, Freddie, you better get up. You know Master Corvey is a snake. They called him the snake because he would sneak up on you anytime without your notice. They called him the snake because he would say, I'm going to town. In reality, he would ride off on his horse and he would go off into the edge of the woods, tie the horse up, and then he'll sneak back on us. That's why we called him the snake, because you never knew when he was around. So as I was going down, they say, Freddie, you better get up. So I got up. However, the next time I went down, and when I looked down, it was his feet. And he kindly said, Freddie, what's wrong? I said, Master, I got pain in my side. He said, where at in your side? I said, Master, right here, Master, right here. He said, move your hand. So I fell into the trap, and I moved my hand, and he kicked me on my side. And not only did he kick me on my side, he had a long switch, and he started whipping me with it, and he gashed me on the side of my head. So I managed to get up, and I managed to run. And I ran 7 miles back to Master R's house. When I burst through the door, I said, Master, Master, please move me, because they're trying to kill me. Master just stood up, and he said, Frederick, you best to get back there. Because if you don't get back there, I'm going to whip you myself. And to this day, 201 years later, I take my hat off to Miss Sophia. Because Miss Sophia, she drew a breath, and she gasped. And when she opened up to speak, she said, Thomas, let Frederick stay. You don't know what that did for my psyche. Let Frederick stay. And she paused again, sir. And then, after she spoke again, she said, let Frederick stay the night. Master said, you can stay tonight, but tomorrow, you're going back. Well, here it is, a Friday night. Saturday, I come downstairs. It's breakfast time. Well, they all sitting at the table. My stomach is growling. My stomach was growling so loud as I come down the steps. You wouldn't even hear me coming down the steps. You'll hear my stomach. Every time I took a step, grr, grr, that's a sign that I was terribly hungry. So when I got down there, I'm smelling this breakfast food and what have you. And so I go to the table and I put my hand right here. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll let you know what they were having for breakfast. They was having eggs, bacon, flapjacks. Anybody know what flapjacks are? Anybody? What are they? You got it. Oh, were you back there that time? Because you were asking all the right questions. So anyway, as I'm thinking that I'm going to get something to eat before I have to leave, Master just stood up and he said, Frederick, leave now. Me on my hungry stomach, that's what I did. I left. And I made my way back to Master Corvey's plantation. I want you to concentrate on this right leg. As I got to the plantation and I started climbing over the fence, I put my right leg over the fence. Who was coming? Master Corvey. What did he have in his hand? A whip. What did I do with my right leg? I took it back off that fence and I ran. And then I came back a few hours later and I did the same thing. I put my leg on that fence, getting ready to go. Who's coming again? Master Corvey. What does he have in his hand? A whip. I took that same right leg, I took it off and I ran again. This time, I ran off in the woods. And I ran across a free slave and his family. He told me, he said, Freddie, come on in. And I stayed there overnight, Saturday to Sunday. The Sunday morning, this gentleman, he said, come go with me, Freddie. And he went out in the woods and he started digging like a dog. And he reached down and he pulled up a rabbit's foot. And he said, Freddie, you take this rabbit's foot and you put it in your right pocket. I guarantee you, if you put this in your right pocket, that old mean master will never touch you again. My response was, you know what? You keep that rabbit's foot. I don't believe in no superstition. And he said, well, guess what, Freddie? You got a choice. You take this rabbit foot or you go back and you get whipped. I said, give me that rabbit foot. And I put that bad boy in my pocket. And I went back. And when I got back this time, I put that same right leg over the fence. Here come Master. But wait a minute, something's different. Master comes and he says, Frederick, come, my friend. He even called me his friend. Come, how are you? And I'm thinking to myself, wow, this rabbit foot really works. And he says, take the rest of the day off. As a matter of fact, tomorrow morning, which would have been Monday, he said, I want you to go clean out the barn. Yes, Master. I'll go do that for you, Master. I'm feeling mighty good about myself. I didn't get a whip. I got the rabbit's foot. Everything is okay. So the next morning comes, where am I at? I'm out in the barn. I'm cleaning. Happy. I'm singing a song, too. All of a sudden, the door opens up, and it's Master Corvey. Master Corvey comes in with a whip in his hand. And he unlashes this whip. And it ties around my ankle. And as he starts to pull me, quite naturally, I'm going, but I managed, in all of that, I managed to go down and grab the whip, untied from my ankle, and I tied it around my wrist. And as I tied it, I started pulling him towards me. And that's when the battle ensued. For 2 hours, we went head, head, head. And in the middle, as we taking a break from each other, he comes out and he says, Frederick, you must want to die today. I said, Master, I guess I was going to die because you ain't going to hit me no more. Well, there was a slave going by because Master started calling, Robert, Robert! Robert came in and he looked and he said, Robert, come get Frederick. And I said, don't you touch me, Robert. And he said, oh, Frederick, I ain't going to touch you. But he did touch me because he touched me right here. I kicked him. And he fell and he went on out the window. Now, out the door. Now, another slave came. This time, this slave, he opened up the door and he just looked. That was all he needed because he shut the door and went on about his business. And then there was another young lady, slave, she was kind of barely big. And I said to myself, I hope she don't come over here because if she come over here, she going to beat me because she's bigger than me. Well, she saw what was going on and Master called her. Louise, Louise, you get over here. And she said, Master, that's your battle. I ain't got nothing to do with that. I'm gone. Oh, look at here. I pushed Master off and I wiped the brow because I was like, oh, please don't let her come over here. Well, when it was all said and done, the question is, who got up and who stayed down? Anybody want to answer that question? Who got up and who stayed down once the fight is over? Anybody want to take a check? Oh, you were there, weren't you? Who got up?
You.
No, not me. Who got up?
The Master.
No. Who got up? Say his name.
Frederick.
Frederick got up. Frederick Douglass got up. Now, when I got up, and Master was still down, maybe about 2-3 weeks had passed. And Master came to me as he was walking by. He said, Frederick, I could have whipped you. I should have whipped you. Don't have me to get back at you. So when he told me that, sir, you know what I said to myself? Master, you don't want no more of this. You better keep on walking by. And for the next 6 months that I was on that plantation, Master never touched me again. However, I must come out and say that though he never touched me again, I will let you know that the other slaves who got whipped, it hurt me deeply. It's like every time they got whipped, it was like I was being whipped. And somewhere, someday, I was out to try to change that. Well, before long, I did my 6 months with Master Corvée, and they took me to another plantation. This time I went to Master Freeman's plantation. Everybody say Freeman, please.
Freeman.
Freeman. And the key word is free. Everybody say free.
Free.
Because after I had that battle with Master Corvée and I won, believe it or not, I became free in form, but I still was a slave in fact. So when I got to Master Freeman's plantation, Master Freeman, he was an easygoing master. He wasn't as hard as Master Corvée was, meaning that we had to get up in the morning and we had to go out to the fields. Meaning that as soon as the sun started going down, guess what? He would let us have free time. I remember, now that I'm speaking of it, I remember it was Christmas holiday.